The moment my brother laughed at me in that courtroom, I nearly smiled. Not because anything about the situation was amusing, but because for the first time in his life, Derek was about to learn how completely he had misjudged me. "No lawyer?" he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "You're done." A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Across the courtroom, my father smirked with obvious satisfaction. Their high-priced attorney leaned back in his chair, looking as though the case had already been won. And there I stood alone. No legal team. No family standing beside me. No one speaking on my behalf. Just me, a stack of documents, and 32 years of being underestimated. What none of them knew was that within 5 hours, everything would change. Before the day was over, my father would collapse onto the courtroom floor, and the carefully constructed image my family had built of me would be shattered forever. My name is Carolyn Reeves. At 32 years old, I was an army officer, a homeowner, and a woman who had spent her entire life trying to earn approval from people who had already decided I would never be enough. Growing up, my older brother Derek was the golden child. The rules were always different for him. If he forgot an obligation, it was an innocent mistake. If I made one, it was proof of a personal flaw. When Derek brought home average grades, my father praised him for trying. When I earned straight A's, the first question was always why one score wasn't higher. Nothing I did was ever enough. For years, I believed them. I wondered if maybe there was something wrong with me. Maybe I truly wasn't as capable as everyone else. Maybe I deserved to live in the background while Derek remained the center of attention. Then my grandfather changed everything. Colonel Thomas Reeves, a decorated Vietnam veteran and retired Army officer, was the only person in my family who ever saw me for who I really was. When I was 13, after a particularly painful argument with my father, I sat alone behind Grandpa's garage, fighting back tears. Without saying much, he sat beside me and handed me a bottle of root beer. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he looked over and asked, "Do you know why they're wrong about you?" I shook my head. A small smile appeared on his face. "Because they're measuring you with the wrong ruler." Those words stayed with me for the rest of my life. At 18, I made the decision to join the army. My father hated it. He said I wasn't strong enough. He said I would fail. He predicted I'd be back home within months. Before I could answer, Grandpa slowly pushed his chair back and stood. The entire room fell silent. Then he looked directly at my father and said, "I remember saying those exact same things to you when you enlisted." For the first time I could remember, my father had absolutely nothing to say. A week later, I left home. And I never looked back. The army gave me something my family never could, an environment where effort actually mattered. Nobody cared about my last name. Nobody cared who my father was. Results mattered. Discipline mattered. Performance mattered. And for the first time in my life, I thrived. Year after year, I earned promotions, commendations, leadership positions, and responsibilities most people my age could only dream of. Every accomplishment felt like another confirmation that Grandpa had been right all along. The problem was that none of it mattered back home. When I became an officer, my father changed the subject. When I bought my first house, he asked why I wasn't married. When I received awards and recognition, he somehow found a way to make the conversation about Derek. And Derek? He drifted from one disaster to the next. Failed businesses. Bad investments. Broken relationships. Every mistake was followed by another rescue from my father. The cycle repeated itself for years. Then everything changed. My mother passed away unexpectedly. Whatever balance still existed in our family disappeared overnight. My father became increasingly bitter. Derek became even more entitled. And my grandfather became the only family member I still felt genuinely connected to. Every Sunday, I called him. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we sat in comfortable silence. Those conversations became one of the most important parts of my life. Then came the phone call I had dreaded for years. Grandpa had suffered a stroke. I booked a flight immediately. When I walked into his hospital room, he looked frail in a way I had never seen before. But when he saw me, he smiled. He reached for my hand and squeezed it gently. "Still carrying this family on your back?" he whispered. I laughed, trying to hide the fear in my voice. "Somebody has to." His smile widened. "Good." Those were the last meaningful words we ever shared. 2 weeks later, he was gone. At the funeral, I stood beside his casket feeling as though I had lost the only person who had ever truly believed in me. The only person who had ever seen my worth before I proved it to anyone else. A week later, our family gathered for the reading of his will. At first, everything seemed routine. Keepsakes, family heirlooms, charitable donations, personal gifts. Then the attorney reached the section everyone had been waiting for. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. My grandfather's estate was worth several $1 million. Properties, investments, savings accumulated over a lifetime of hard work and sacrifice. And what happened next would ignite a family war that would eventually lead us all to that courtroom. The estate represented a lifetime of sacrifice, discipline, and hard-earned success. And the majority of it had been left to me. Not to Derek. Not to my father. To me. For 3 long seconds, nobody spoke. The room seemed frozen in place. Then Derek burst out laughing. He honestly believed there had been some kind of clerical error. My father immediately leaned forward. "Read that again." The attorney calmly reviewed the document and repeated the distribution exactly as written. Nothing changed. The laughter vanished from Derek's face. My father's expression darkened. And then the accusations began. I had manipulated an elderly man. I had pressured my grandfather. I had stolen what rightfully belonged to them. According to my father and brother, there was no other possible explanation. They couldn't imagine a world where Grandpa had simply made his own decision. 3 weeks later, they filed a lawsuit. Undue influence. Fraud. Manipulation. Their goal was simple: destroy the will and reclaim every dollar. And they were completely convinced they would win. Then I made a decision nobody expected. I refused to hire an attorney. I would represent myself. No legal team. No expensive consultants. No courtroom specialists. Just me. When my father heard, he laughed so hard he nearly choked. Derek found it even funnier. By the time the trial arrived, they were treating the outcome as a foregone conclusion. On the first morning, as we waited for proceedings to begin, Derek leaned toward me with a smug grin. "You're finished." I didn't respond. I simply opened my folder and waited. The plaintiffs had hired one of the most respected probate attorneys in Ohio. His reputation alone intimidated most opponents before a case even started. The courtroom was packed with spectators. Everyone expected the same ending. A powerful attorney against a woman representing herself. An easy victory. At least, that's what everyone assumed. The first day unfolded exactly as they hoped. The attorney carefully constructed a narrative designed to paint me as manipulative and calculating. He argued that I had grown unusually close to my grandfather during his final years. That I had isolated him. Influenced him. Controlled him. It was an impressive presentation. And honestly, if the facts had supported it, it might have been effective. But facts have a stubborn habit of refusing to cooperate with fiction. So I remained patient. I asked only a handful of questions. I took notes. I listened. And I waited. By lunchtime, my father looked triumphant. Derek practically seemed ready to spend the inheritance. Their confidence filled the courtroom. Then came the second day. And everything changed. When Judge Raymond Holloway entered that morning, something immediately caught my attention. He was carrying 2 files. The first was the estate case. The second was significantly thicker. The moment I saw it, I recognized it. My military personnel file. Not the public version. Not a brief summary. The complete record. Years of evaluations. Leadership reports. Specialized training. Federal certifications. Investigative assignments. Court testimony. Legal education. Every achievement. Every responsibility. Every chapter of the life my family had never bothered to understand. The judge had spent the previous evening researching exactly who I was. Across the room, the opposing attorney noticed the file too. For the first time since the trial began, I saw uncertainty cross his face. The proceedings started normally. A few procedural matters were addressed. Then the judge turned toward the attorney. His expression was unreadable. "Counselor," he said, "do you believe Ms. Reeves is at a disadvantage because she is representing herself?" The attorney nodded confidently. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Holloway opened the file. The courtroom fell silent. Then he began reading. Advanced legal training. Financial investigation certifications. Federal testimony experience. Leadership appointments. Regulatory compliance expertise. Complex case management. Page after page. Achievement after achievement. The silence in the room became heavier with every word. People stopped shifting in their seats. Even the attorney seemed uncomfortable. Finally, the judge closed the file. He looked directly at opposing counsel. Then he delivered a sentence that changed the entire trial. "Ms. Reeves does not need a lawyer." The silence that followed felt almost physical. No one moved. No one spoke. Derek's smile disappeared instantly. My father frowned in confusion. The attorney reached for the file. Within seconds, he was scanning page after page. Then suddenly, he stopped. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face. "Oh my God," he whispered. My father immediately leaned forward. "What is it?" Without answering, the attorney handed him the file. "Read it." I watched my father begin turning the pages. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw something remarkable happen. His confidence vanished. Then his certainty. Then the arrogance he had carried for decades. Because for the first time, he wasn't looking at the daughter he had imagined. He was looking at the daughter who actually existed. He was reading about accomplishments he had never asked about. Responsibilities he had never cared enough to understand. Sacrifices he had never acknowledged. Successes he had never celebrated. Page after page revealed a life he had completely ignored. And with every page, another illusion shattered. The weak daughter. The disappointment. The child he had underestimated. The person he had always treated as second best. She had quietly become the most accomplished person in the entire Reeves family. His hands began to shake. The file slipped lower. His face lost all color. Then his knees buckled. And he collapsed onto the courtroom floor. Gasps echoed through the room. Medical personnel rushed forward. People stood from their seats. Voices erupted from every direction. Within seconds, the courtroom dissolved into chaos. But I never moved. I simply sat there. Calm. Silent. Watching the truth accomplish what no argument ever could. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't require anger. Sometimes it doesn't even require victory. Sometimes revenge is simply allowing reality to introduce you to people who never cared enough to know who you really were. And as I watched my father's world come apart around him, I finally understood something my grandfather had known all those years ago. The problem was never that I wasn't enough. The problem was that they had spent their entire lives measuring me with the wrong ruler.